In week 8, you need to modify your exercise area 5.3 area circle problem. And you're going to first make it using the J option pane, which you also learned during week 4. So you're going to go back to your week 4 knowledge. And in this exercise, you practiced overloading using different parameters. The overloading was when you named two methods the exact same name, but one accepted a different number of parameters, and the program just knew which one to call. So that's the overloading that you practiced. And then you also practiced returning values from methods, which was different because when we made our methods originally, we always had the void in them. And we learned this week that when you're trying to return a value, you need to change the name. You can't have void. You actually change it when you're returning to the value type of what you're sending back. So if you're sending back a double, and instead of void, you'd put double. If you're sending an integer, you'd put int. If you're sending a string, you'd put string. So this problem I think was confusing because I don't know that everyone fully understood what you were doing in this. So to calculate the area of a circle, we all knew that area is pi times radius squared. So in this particular circle that I drew, I have a radius of 5. And knowing what pi is, and if I multiply pi by radius squared, which would be 25, I get around, a little bit close to 79 as my area of this particular circle. And we worked on that again during week 3, exercise 4.2. But instead of using pi, some people typed pi in themselves, but really what you were supposed to do is use the math.pi function, because we know pi is a super long, I don't even know how many decimal places it goes. So they have a method in there for us called math.pi, and so we should use that. The other math method we should use in order to get something to a square root is math.pow for the power of. And so the radius would have been the first number. So the base is the first number you put in the parentheses, and then the second number you put in the parentheses is the power. So I'm raising it to the second power. And some of you, which was pretty brilliant, did just radius times radius because that's the exact same thing. I thought that was pretty clever. So what do you do if the radius is not known? So if it's not known, well, then you're going to use the distance formula. And the book walks you through how they built the distance formula, but we want the ending one, which is on page 54. It's the second one down, and it should look like this. And the distance formula basically just tells you the distance between 2 points. And so that's going to help us. If we want to find out the distance between these 2 points, well, guess what? That's going to give us the radius. That's the whole purpose of the distance formula. And then I highlighted over here, this is where we normally put void, but we're putting double because we're going to return the result. And in their equation that they did in the book, result is really the radius. So it's going to go through, it has 4 inputs, and notice they go in x1, y1, x2, and y2 order. So this is, it's dx, which I think stands for delta x, so the change in x. So they're doing x2 minus x1, y2 minus y1. They're squaring the numbers, so they're multiplying dx by dx. So you could do the math.pow, but they did it kind of what a lot of you did, was just multiply it by itself to get the squared number. And then they're going to add to it the delta y, or the change in y, squaring that. And then they're going to do math sqrt, which is the square root. So they're going to get the square root of d squared, and then that's going to be the result, and that ending result is actually going to be the radius. So I just have an example here, because you might say to me, oh, Mrs. Donahue, what if I put one in one order, one in the other? Because really, if you're looking at your math manuals will call this H, K for the center of the circle. So I want to show you that it doesn't matter as long as you're consistent. So consistency is key. So in this one, I said, okay, this is going to be x2, y2, and the center of the circle I said for this one is x1, y1. So if I did it this way, so I said 7, which is the second one, minus the center circle, it gives you 2, and then I do 8 minus the 6 of the center circle gives you 2, and then if I do 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4, I get with 8, I do the square root of 8, and I get a radius of approximately 2.828. Well, if I go in the opposite direction, and it's because of the squared that we get the same number, so the distance the other way would give us a negative number. So if I switched and I said, okay, the center of the circle is actually x2, well, I'd get a negative number and a negative number, but we know a negative times a negative is a positive. So I still end up with 4 plus 4, which is 8, so I still get the square root of 8, and I still get the same radius. So it doesn't matter as long as you're the same. So what I noticed a lot of people doing, which I gave feedback for, is you guys were sending the parameters to different places, and I think it's because you didn't quite understand what these 4 numbers you were getting. So it's important to understand what numbers you're receiving. So these are the helpful hints that I saw. And I'm taking them from your classmates because they did some really good ideas. So they used some helpful wording. So they're like, okay, enter the x value for the center of the circle, enter the y value for the center of the circle, x value for a point on the circle, and a y value for a point on the circle. I didn't put them all in there. And so when you do that, then you would end up getting the radius. And then we know we can calculate the center of the circle using the radius. And so again, I say make sure you consistently pass the parameters to the same value. Okay, so the way your method should have, you should have a main method that takes inputs, and again, use helpful messages. The book says, I think the way that they word it, that you're doing like x1, x2, y1, y2, well, you don't have to ask them in that order. You can say, give me the x value of the center, give me the y value of the center, give me the x value of the point on the circle, give me the y value of the point on the circle. And that would actually match better with when you're sending it down to the distance method, but it doesn't matter as long as you remember which value you're putting where and you keep the names correct. So the main method is then going to call the area circle method that takes the 4 parameters. And then because you're going to do some returns here, you're going to actually print out afterwards, but it needs to go through your other methods first. So the area circle method is going to take in the 4 parameters. It's going to call the distance method. The distance method takes in the 4 parameters, and then that's going to return up here. And then you're going to call the area circle method, but this time you're going to send, so you'll have the result that was returned from the distance method, and then you're going to take that result and you're going to send it down to the area circle method, which only takes 1 parameter, which is radius. So you're going to send that down, it's going to take that value, and then you're going to make that be a return as well. That return is going to go up here to the to here, and then from the this original area circle method, you're returning the value, it's going to go up, and then you're going to print it on the screen. So you're going to modify this particular exercise for week 8, but you need to make sure that you have this particular exercise correct first before you can modify it.